Hi there. So I just want to show a quick video showing how I get the flexible nose piece put in on my masks. So what I've got here is I'm just sewing the deaconess pattern, which is the rectangular pattern with the pleats. And I've already sewn my two pieces together with a 2-inch opening to turn it out through, and I've already sewn the elastics in the corners, so you'll see those when I turn it out. But I just want to show, like, basically all you do is you sew around here and all the way around, leaving an opening. And I've used about a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then what I've done is I've taken, this was just in my stash, so I've actually had this for, gosh, since my son was a baby, so I've had this about 10 years. It's just some flexible ribbon with the wire in it. And what I did is I just folded it over, just a length that looked good for what you'd think maybe a nose, flexible nose piece should be. And then I've taken it, this was maybe 6 inches, but again, I just eyeballed it. You could do whatever you want. So I figured I wanted about this much, so I wanted it folded in half. I feel like the 4 wires gives a really secure or a amount of control that will hold the shape really well. So basically I've just folded this in half and then folded in half again to get the wires to line up. I'm going to put this, just nothing fancy, I'm just going to eyeball it, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to line it up so these wires are all next to each other, and I'm going to just kind of eyeball it and center it, and I'm going to have it so the wire is just sticking over the edge of the fabric, and I'm going to sew it down to the seam allowance. And what that's going to do is when I turn it right side out, it's going to hold it in place nicely, so it'll be just a little bit off the top, and it'll stay put in a nice spot, and it won't show your stitches on the lining or on the outside. So I'm just going to put it in there, and I'm going to lock the stitches. And then I'm going to back stitch. So it really doesn't matter if your ribbon is as wide as mine. It probably would be better if it's not. I think this is a little excessive, but it's just what I had. So you can see that is just sewn down in there, and it's sewn right to that seam allowance. So again, if you had a thinner ribbon, that's fine. You really don't need it to be that thick. This is just what I had on hand. And if you had something that was really, I mean, you could fold it as many times as you want to get the firmness that you want from your elastic. The first one I did had 2, and I didn't think that was quite enough on there. So now I'm going to, like I said, I already sewed the elastic in, and I'm just going to turn it right side out. And I'm just going to sort of finger press a little bit to try to get, want to make sure that I get it so that wire is right up. The seam is sort of pushed out. So I'm actually going to run this right over and do a quick press. Okay, so I'm back. And I have just pressed this and pinned the pleats into place. And I do have, this is the edge with my metal inside, my little ribbon. And this is the end with my opening that I turned through. So I've pressed that down. So now I'm just going to top stitch around the sides and remove my pins as I go. And I'm doing a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And basically when I come around to this, you're going to find the wires are right down here. So if you keep with that 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, you shouldn't go over your wires. It's pretty soft and thin, so I'm not sure it would cause much of a problem anyway. It wouldn't be like going over a needle. But putting it into the seam allowance like that, it sort of keeps it out of your way, but also in a convenient spot for when it's being used, that it's not right at the top, but it is where just down slightly, which is where you would probably want it. And the Deaconess instructions, they did say to go around twice with the top stitching, just for extra durability, so I am going to do that. Now you can do this as well with, I think there was I forget what they called it. There was another pattern that looks more like a molded type pattern rather than the rectangle where you cut out shaped pieces. And you can absolutely do this on that too. And again, you'll just want to sew that to the seam allowance. It's just going to be once you sew the two halves together and press them, well, you're going to finger press the seam open, and then you're going to sew the seam down. And once you have that piece together, and you sew it to your lining, you can go ahead right before you turn it inside out and sew it right to the seam allowance again. And you'll just want to make sure to manipulate it. You just kind of feel with your fingers and manipulate it. Make sure that it stays outside of that 1/8 inch of top stitching once you do go around. But it should work the same way. And again, you can use trial and error and get the number of wires in there that you think is right, that you prefer, or that gives the shape that you would like to have. So that is that. And we have a face mask. So that's what I can't get all that far away. But it does have the wire in there, and then it'll hold pretty much where you set it. And so that just pretty much allows it to be shaped around the nose so that it avoids air gap, so fewer particles or germs can get in and past the mask. So I hope this is helpful. Happy sewing, and stay safe and healthy.